Look, I am wanting to talk to you. Sorry for looking around all over the place, because I'm just going to bring up some other bits and pieces. I'm wanting to talk to you a bit about what's happening in New Zealand with COVID at the moment, the modeling that has been talked about and is being done, but also this conversation is really based around conversations that I'm having with people who are basically going, "Oh, when's this thing going to be over?" And when we talked last time, you said I'd got a couple of things wrong in the modeling. And what I want to do is just check what the information is, come to you and go, what are we thinking, to try and help people understand where we're at now and where we're going. Now, let me just set this up by saying this is why I think this, why I've been thinking this. Because when we're having a look around the world, so this is Ireland, this is their Omicron spike. When we have a look around the world, it seems that most places similar to New Zealand, no perfect match, have had this Omicron spike for 3 to 6 weeks. And by that, I've been talking about, so you can see the upslope here, and they went up basically on Christmas Day, and they came down the other side about January 16th. So in Ireland, that was quite quick, that actual initial spike. It's going up again. Theirs was about 3 weeks. If we have a look at Australia, a similar sort of thing that was about January 3rd, as you can see there on the way up, and on the way down, it was about, January 31st, February 1st, so about a month. Looking to New Zealand, where we're at, we started to take off, at the end of February, and we're now over a month later, and it feels like we're table topping. Like I think I mentioned in the email to you, it feels like we're in the teens of thousands every day. It's 19,000, then it's 14,000, then it's 12,000, then it's 15,000, then it's 14,000. And I just wanted to check in. We've been talking a bit about BA2, the second variant, and maybe because we're getting BA2 the same time as BA1, we're going to tabletop, where other countries, as we saw on some of those graphs, are having a bit more of a peak now. But really, this is just a conversation to go, can you help us understand where we're at? And I guess through your modeling expertise, potentially where we're going. It's a long-winded introduction, and I will now happily throw you the COVID ball to have a chat about it.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I mean, BA2 I think is a factor. So New Zealand has had a mixture of BA1 and BA2, which are the sort of the twin cousins of the Omicron variant. But BA2 is more transmissible. It means it spreads faster. Yeah. And so what's happened is BA2 over time has actually become the dominant variant in New Zealand. And during the peak that we're kind of in at the moment, BA2 is really, the overwhelming majority, we think, of those cases. So I think that partially explains why we have seen maybe a higher and a longer peak than other countries. Australia, being a comparison country, their wave that they had in December, January was primarily BA1. And I think what they're seeing now with some of the states having a resurgence is there is more BA2 around, and that's part of the reason. It's probably not the only reason. And another factor is that, public health interventions have been scaled back. People have relaxed their behavior. More people are out and about now than they were during the peak of that wave, which of course was during the school holidays as well. Right. And so that is also contributing to a bit of a second wave that you can see there in that graph. In Australia and other countries as well have seen a similar thing where they've had a big BA1 wave. Cases come down for a while, but then as BA2 takes over, they go back up again. So in New Zealand, we're not quite in that situation because we've already had, if you like, our BA2 wave. We've kind of got it out of the way. And so I do think cases will, although it looks like they're on a tabletop at the moment, I do think they will start to come down a bit more clearly over the coming weeks. But they're certainly not going to go, they're not going to go down to zero. And I think we're likely to see case numbers in the thousands for some time to come.
Okay, so I think about modeling as sort of a predicting factor based on data. I don't know if it's a fair way to think about it or not, but kind of a way to try and say, this is what is likely to happen given these set of circumstances. So given those set of circumstances, like, are we able to think about we will be on the downslope in a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Because here's my concern, yeah, and I shared this picture on Monday in the show. Where this is from the Highlanders game on Friday night, right? This is the crowd at the Highlanders game on Friday night. Because even though the stadium is under a roof here in Dunedin, it's considered an outside venue because it doesn't have walls, basically, and thousands and thousands and thousands of primarily students on top of each other, maskless. And one of the things that's happening, I mean, like, it could be in Dunedin that they've all had COVID, because that happened at the start of the wave, as all the students got hit, and they might all be, have some sort of antibodies for the next 3 to 6 months, and so I'm overreacting, showing concern for that. But what I want to try and do is help people understand, because when I came into this year, we put some quite conservative restrictions around our household. We took kids out of school. We wanted to be safe. And in our heads, we were going, we're giving this 4 weeks. Now that's up. And we're kind of going, oh, crap, is it going to be another 4 weeks? What should we be thinking about doing? How do we plan our future with what's going to happen from here? I want to give people accurate information as much as we can, encouragement to go, if you give it this much longer, let's reassess. But also everyone, even me, is starting to go, okay, when sort of thing. So are we able to look at through the modeling, through the data as to, I guess what I'm asking really in a long-winded way is, can we say 2 more weeks and then we'll know? Can we say a month and then we'll know? Or can we just literally not say that?
I mean, nothing's ever guaranteed with COVID, but I do think cases will come down, and I hope they will come down. They will start to come down a bit more rapidly than what we've seen so far. But they're not going to go down all the way to zero. They're not going to go down probably as quickly as what they shot up in sort of February and the early part of March. Part of the reason we've got this tabletop is we've had different situations in different parts of the country. So if you're sort of making those calculations and looking at what is the risk if we go out and we go and mix with people, we go and busy restaurants or what have you, you really want to be looking at the cases in your local area, because Auckland obviously had a very high peak at the start, but has since come down actually quite a lot. From their peak, whereas other places like Canterbury and most of the South Island are really still very much in the peak. I think we probably have passed the peak now, but we're certainly still have very high case rates. But I do anticipate they will come down. So yeah, different pictures in different parts of the country, and sort of taking account of that regional effect. Because of course, if you take a whole lot of peaks that are happening at different times, and you add them all together to get a national case number, which is what you're looking at in those graphs there, that does create more of a sort of tabletop shape to it.
That was the thing that frustrated me about that Highlanders game. I mean, I had Michael Baker on last week, and he basically said, the South Island is in its peak now. That was like Thursday last week. I think that was Friday night, that game. And I was like, holy crap, we are in our peak in Dunedin, and this is the behavior. But just to echo what you're saying, to give people some kind of understanding, even in these numbers internationally, which are different, you do see the peak go up a lot quicker than the kind of slope coming down the other side, don't you? So what you're saying actually is still echoed in the international data as well, it would appear. Yeah, I guess my email to you yesterday and my conversation is kind of, I've been a pretty strong stalwart in, let's follow the science. Let's these restrictions are okay. They're temporary. But then when the government eases up on things, and then I see that at the Highlanders, I go, oh, fuck, if they're out, like if the government's out now, when we've got such a short time of frame to go, why would any of us be in? So there's probably an element, and I'm sure as an academic and a professor, you can't comment to that, but my frustrations are probably a part of this. And especially when I'm seeing people I know or are connected to one step away in Dunedin at the moment, COVID's going through groups of people like a fire. So I'm just trying to figure out, I guess I'm being selfish, trying to figure out what I'm going to do, but I'm hoping, and what that's going to do as well is say to some other people, this is how we need to think about it today. And if, like for me, as I said earlier in this show, 3 weeks from now is the start of term 2. Do you think, without any guarantees knowing, I mean, there could be BA3 in 3 days, who knows? But in 3 weeks, the start of term 2 for secondary schools, we're likely to see at least a downturn by then? Do you think that's a fair enough thing to? I know I'm not looking for a prediction from a professor, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do think that's a fair expectation. Although we could again have different situations in different parts of the country. You know, obviously, COVID will have sort of torn through some school communities already, whereas other schools maybe haven't seen so much yet. And so we will get different timings of different outbreaks in different communities and in different schools. I mean, I sense your frustration, and I think it's almost an inevitable frustration of moving from the elimination strategy, which we sort of enjoyed the benefits of for the best part of 2 years, where really the government took care of everything for us. It was the government's job to keep the virus out of the country at the border, which they didn't do perfectly, but they did a pretty good job of. And when the virus did come in, the government said, okay, well, we're going to do a strict lockdown, or we're going to do what we need to do to get rid of it. And so people, by and large, there was public buy-in for that approach. And that meant we enjoyed long periods of time when we didn't have to worry. We didn't have to think even about the virus, which was an incredibly privileged position to be in, really, compared to the rest of the world for most of 2020 and 2021. Whereas the situation is different now, and I think it's almost inevitable that the government has had to offload some of that decision making from a centralized government telling everyone what they can and can't do onto some, much greater degree of individual decision making, individuals sort of assessing their own risks and deciding what they're comfortable with. And different people will have their own different responses to that. I think a lot of people are in your sort of boat where they're thinking, okay, well, there's clearly a lot of COVID out there. We're going to really try and limit our risk at the moment. And I think it's good that people have done that, because that helps flatten the curve. It helps reduce the load on our healthcare systems during this wave that we're in at the moment. We're sort of, I think we're kind of halfway through the sprint phase of Omicron, but the marathon is still to come. COVID isn't going to go away, and we need now to sort of transition into a sustainable long-term approach once this peak has subsided, which I think it will, a sustainable long-term approach to managing the impacts of the virus.
Alrighty then. I don't know whether I feel better or worse after the conversation. I feel from the School of Mathematics and Statistics at the University of Canterbury. That is Professor Michael Plank. Michael, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate your insights. And yep, in my head, you haven't said this to me. I know you haven't said this. I'm not taking this as Michael said, but I started term 2. That's going to be my target from now on. It's going to be, we'll reassess through the holidays. And we're fingers crossed hoping that we'll see a significant improvement by the start of term 2. See if I can get my house back to myself during the day so I can work rather than having children around studying who are looking at me from the other room right now as I say that out loud. All right, Michael. Hey, thank you, sir. I really appreciate your time.
Kia ora, my pleasure.